Good evening, and welcome to the third part of my series and the final part of The First Sex. My name is Tamara Von Forslun, and I am the matriarch of the clan of Boskednan and an international author. Throughout the world and throughout what we know of history, something called God has been used to support the denial, the condemnation, and the mutilation of female sexuality. Of the female sex ourselves, today in parts of Africa, predominantly African Muslims, but also amongst Orthodox Christians and Jews, and even some tribal beliefs, young girls are still subjected to clitoridectomies. This surgery, often performed by elder women with broken glass or knives, excises the clitoris, severing the nerves of orgasm, and the operation thus is intended to force the girl to concentrate on the vagina as a reproductive vessel. Infibulation, a more thorough operation, removes the labia minora and much of the labia majora. The girl is then closed up with thorns or required to lie with her legs tied until her entire vaginal orifice is fused shut, with a straw inserted to allow the passage of urine and menstrual blood. On the wedding night, the young woman is slit open by a midwife or a husband. Further cutting and reclosing is performed before and after childbirth. Complications from these surgeries are numerous, including death from infection, hemorrhage, inability to urinate, scar tissue preventing dilation during labor, painful coitus, and infertility due to chronic pelvic infection. In 2006, an estimated 10 million girls and women were involved with this operation to varying degrees, and something called God justified it. A God who supposedly created young girls as filthy sex maniacs who must be mutilated to turn them into docile breeders. The word infibulation comes from the Latin fibula, meaning a clasp. These civilized Romans, great highway builders, also invented the technology of fastening metal clasps through the prepuces of young girls to enforce chastity. This practice was adopted and copied by Christian crusaders during the Middle Ages in Europe, where they locked up their wives and daughters in metal chastity belts, and then took the keys with them while they were gone, often for many years, fighting for God in the Near East, but some never returning. In The Nature and Evolution of Female Sexuality, Mary Jane Surfey, MD, described her discovery in 1961 of something called the inductive theory. The inductive theory stated that all mammalian embryos, male and female, are anatomically female during the early stages of fetal life. Surfey wondered which this theory had been buried in the medical literature since 1951, completely ignored by the profession and the men who made her story, making discoveries simply not want it to be true. Surfey pioneered the discussion of the inductive theory, and now, with modifications based on further data, its findings are accepted as facts of mammalian, including human development. And as Stephen Jay Gould describes it, the embryo in its first 8 weeks is an indifferent creature with bisexual potential. In the 8th week of the Y chromosome-bearing sperm fuses with an egg, the gonads will develop into testes, which secrete androgen, which in turn induces male genitalia to develop. In the absence of androgen, the embryo develops into a female. There is indifference in the development of the internal and external genitalia. However, for the internal genitalia, the fallopian tubes and ovaries, or the sperm-carrying ducts. The early embryo contains precursors of both sexes, and in the presence or absence of androgen, as one set develops, the other degenerates. With the external genitalia, the different organs of male and female develop along the diverging lines from the same precursor. This means, in effect, that the clitoris and the penis are exactly the same organ, formed from the same tissue. The labia majora and the scrotum are exactly one, indistinguishable in the early embryonic stages. And in the presence of androgen, the two lips simply grow together and longer, folding over and fuse along the midline, forming the scrotal sac. Gould includes that the female course of development is in a sense, biologically intrinsic to all mammals. It is the pattern that unfolds in the absence of any hormonal balance or influence. The male root is a modification induced by secretion of androgens from the developing testes. The vulnerability of the male newcomer within the female environment is well known. Vaginal secretions are more destructive to the Y-bearing sperm. The mortality rate is higher among neonate and infant males. Within the womb, the male fetus for the first 2 months is protected by being virtually indistinguishable from a female. After that, it must produce large amounts of the masculinizing hormone in order to define itself as male, to achieve and to maintain its sexual identity. For all we know, the Near Eastern myths upon which our Western mythologies are built, those which portray the young god or hero battling against a female dragon, have some analog here in utero, where the male fetus wages a kind of chemical war against re-becoming female. A hermaphrodite is an organism with both male and female genitalia. In sexually reproducing organisms, males have organs that produce male gametes, usually sperm. Females have different sexual organs that produce female gametes, usually called eggs. In sexually dimorphic organizations, each organism only has type of reproductive organs, and the population is divided into genders. Sometimes the organisms are divided almost equally. In these cases, individuals must compete for mates. Sometimes the genders pair off equally, one male for one female. Other times, one male or female will breed with a large group of the other gender. Hermaphrodites tend to be solitary animals. Although exceptions exist, being a hermaphrodite is thought to increase the chances of solitary organisms reproducing, because they can both give and receive gametes. This allows them to both share their DNA, while at the same time having the chance to develop an offspring of their own. Young developing in two different places also decreased the chance that a random event will wipe out both young. When you live as a solitary animal and mating opportunities are scarce, this is an important advantage for hermaphroditic organisms. In sexually dimorphic organisms, a hermaphrodite may arise because of variations in the genetic code. In humans, hermaphrodites are caused by a variety of genetic conditions. And in one form, a hermaphrodite or intersex person is created when two fertilized eggs fuse together, giving the zygote 2 cross chromosomes and 1 Y chromosome. Other cases of hermaphrodites are caused by the SRY gene, the gene responsible for testosterone and male genitals being transferred to the X chromosome during meiosis, resulting in both male and female genitals, which is quite strong. So we can see a difference there, and we still have that situation today as much as possible. True hermaphrodism is a rare form of intersex anomaly where both male and female gonads are present. True hermaphrodites diagnosed in the past have been preferentially reared as males. However, based on the appearance of their external genitalia and the ability to reconstruct a functional genitourinary system, most of these children should be raised as girls. Between 1954 and 1987, in Australia, there were 18 children with true hermaphrodism. The karyotypes were as follows: 10 46XX, 4 46XY, 3 47XXY, and 1 46XX mosaic. Gonadal distribution was bilateral, 2 ovatestes, and 2 lateral testes and ovary, and 2 and unilateral ovatestes and ovary in the rest. 7 patients were diagnosed shortly after birth. 10 were raised as girls, 8 as boys. Of all these children at the latest stage in life, they all wished to be transitioned into the opposite of what their parents decided. And based on a review of the relationship of external-internal genitalia, gonads, and karyotypes of our own patients and those published by others, we believe the appearance of the external genitalia alone allows a prompt and definitive gender assignment in infancy. This led us to develop a classification of external genitalia based on the following characteristics. Class 1 represents normal female genitalia. Class 2, an enlarged clitoris. Class 3, partially fused labioscrotal folds, and Class 4, fused labioscrotal folds, and Class 5 as a hypoplastic scrotum and pinoscrotal that were Class 2, 2 Class 3, 3 that were Class 4, and 1 Class 5 should be raised as females. And in Class 5, male genital assignment is preferable. This classification, based on the appearance of the external genitalia, allows a simple screening and prompt gender assignment in infants assigned and identified as true hermaphrodites. For now, it is enough to say that maleness among mammals is not a primary state, but differentiates from the original female biochemistry and anatomy. The original libido in warm-blooded animals is female, and the male or maleness is a derivation from the female primary pattern. Why then did the medical men, the scientists, take longer to figure out this basic biological fact that it took them to split the atom? Act was noted. They did turn around and bury it in professional silence for many years until a woman dug it up again. Why indeed? For about 2,000 years of Western history, female sexuality was denied, and when it could not be denied, it was condemned as evil. The female was seen as a divinely designed to be a passive vessel, serving reproductive purposes, and one not too ancient dictionary. Clitoris was defined as a rudimentary organ, while masculinity equaled the cosmic generative force. With Freud, female sexuality was not so much rediscovered as pathologized. Freud dismissed the clitoris as an undeveloped masculine organ and defined original libido as male. Clitoral eroticism was reduced to a perverse neurosis. Even after Masters and Johnson's laboratory studies were published in Human Sexual Response in 1966, their findings were not integrated into psychoanalytical theory. In Mary Jane Sherfy's research during that period, or even mentioned, the deeper lying clitoral structures, yet every other structure of the human body was described in living detail. Blessed be the women who are the warriors of the earth, who fight for women's recognition and truth. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed my three-part series on the first sex and on women. Hope to see you again. Thank you very much for your time. Blessed be.